What's up, gangsters? I'm back for another update on my Freddy project build, which is my ME262. I know. I just did an update, it seems like a couple of days ago, and I practically did, but I have been steadily working on it, and I'm actually getting pretty close to done. So, without further ado, let's take a look. Alright, here it is. You can see that I am pretty close to done. I lack some antenna wires and a pitot tube, and obviously the right engine needs its intake glued on, and I've got to do the center section of the canopy, which quite frankly I'm totally procrastinating on. When I made the commitment to do the canopy open, I also committed to having to paint the inside. The way that this canopy is positioned when it's open, it just shows everything in there, and I just don't feel like I can do it without painting the inside of it, and that's going to be a hassle, but that's all right. That's just part of the process, and I'll just tackle it slowly and methodically and hope that it all comes out good. But what I really want to talk about is the weathering. Now, the truth is, this is about what feels like the 57th time I have started recording this section. I thought that I was going to sit down here and explain the process of how I did the weathering on this aircraft. And every time I do it, I just kind of get lost and I end up feeling like I'm rambling, because now that I'm thinking about it in retrospect, I realize that a lot of it was pretty non-linear, and I'm just not I'm just not having any luck in explaining it effectively. So I'm just going to tell you kind of the basics of what I did, and maybe at some point I will figure out how to make a video or a series of videos about how I did it, assuming that it's worth explaining. Anyway, you guys know that I'm trying to depict the story of a very specific aircraft with this project. This thing was painted in the field. It had the right side engine replaced only a month later, and then it was destroyed. So my basic overall strategy was that the paint could not look very good like it came out of the factory. At the same time, there wouldn't be a lot of chipping, not a lot of wear and tear, because the aircraft just wasn't that old. But it was operating off of a dirt field, so it would have to have a kind of a patina and look, kind of grimy overall. And then there's the fact that there would be localized wear patterns where the aircraft was boarded from the left-hand side, and then where this maintenance activity was done on the right-hand side to replace the engine. So this, involved a lot of layers of progressively darkening the paint, using masking fluid to create this wear pattern area on both sides of the fuselage, using the salt technique, basically a lot of different things to create a lot of depth, which I think is probably pretty difficult to see on camera. But if you're standing, if you're just looking at it right here, you can see, I don't know, maybe you'll be able to tell. You can see that I've got a lot of light and dark areas in the paint over here, and maybe even see that there is a kind of a patina on it in this area right here. The last thing that I did with the paint was I thinned some gray about 90% with thinner, and just took a sponge and just kind of started working around and blotting it all over the surface of the aircraft to kind of give it that patina. Just sort of think of how your car looks a month after you wash it, and it's gotten dusty and gotten rained on and gotten grimy and gotten rained on. And you'll get the idea of kind of what I was trying to achieve there. Pretty subtle, but I think worth the effort. The next thing that I did after the paint was I went ahead and put the decals straight on over the paint. I know I talked about that last time, but worked out just fine. There was no issue with that. Once the decals were down, I put on a layer of gloss varnish and then I started tackling washes. Now, I did my panel line washing with one of my favorites, which is UMP Dark Dirt, that I just dropped, thankfully not on the floor. Anyway, UMP Dark Dirt. You know it, you love it, it's great stuff. I want to point out, though, that I only did the wash on certain panel lines. The ones that I wanted to be black were the ones that I think of as functional panel lines. And by that I mean, like, anywhere there was an actual panel, like the gun bay, that would open up, ailerons, flaps, the slats on the leading edge of the wings, the engine covers. Those are the kind of panel lines that I did with Dark Dirt. I also used a lot of Ultimate Modeling Products Light Dirt. And where I used that mostly was on the bottom of the aircraft. I don't know what color the dirt was at the airfield that these guys operated out of, but I've seen pictures that depict it as being pretty light colored dirt. So I used light dirt, and you can see. Hopefully you can see how I've used that on the tires and given them the try to depict that they are definitely operating off of a dirt field. I also did some dust effects kind of in this area because, again, lots of dust, lots of smoke just from takeoffs and landings. Okay, where I concentrated most of my work, however, was concentrated on these two areas right here. This traffic pattern on top of the left wing where the pilot and the air crew would board the aircraft, and then this area right here where I wanted to show the maintenance activity of the right side engine being replaced and where the punctures from the shrapnel and the bullets were repaired. And that's done with basically just a mishmash of things according to just kind of what felt right at the moment. Most of it I did with pastels, which I just ground up into a little cup. I use some brown, I use some white, I use some black. I just kind of mix it together into what I felt like was kind of a light dirt grime. And some of that I put on immediately onto the paint before I did the gloss coat. But most of it I've finished up on top of the final dull coat. Now, some people might say, well, yeah, but then that's, can fingerprint. It's fragile. It's really not that bad. And the truth is, I don't feel like anything looks as real as it does when it's on the top surface. So I always reserve a little bit of that pastel weathering to go right on top of the dull coat, and then I don't put anything on over the top of it. I also use some real selective enamel washing in some of those areas. I've got some AK enamel wash that's basically black, and then I've got some Winsor & Newton burnt umber oil that I mix up with a ton of mineral spirits just till it sort of feels right, and then I use that in real specific areas. Like I use the burnt umber around this cap to just kind of depict some type of a fuel spill. There's a little bit over here on the right or the left wing that you can also see. Maybe it's kind of subtle. It's right in here. And then this thing, I had a fuel tank right in front of the cockpit, so I drizzled quite a bit of it down the sides of the fuselage right here as well. And again, those effects are real subtle, but to me that's kind of what I want. I don't want anything that's just overpowering all by itself. What I want is a cumulative effect that basically says this thing's been, used by real people and suffered all of the, all of the effects that it would under those circumstances. So did I achieve that effect? I don't know. I mean, that's always the question with art. Did you, achieve the vision that you were open to? I don't know. I'll leave you guys to tell me in the final reveal, and when when I have some photographs that show all of this stuff a little bit more effectively. But basically, that's the process in a very, what now feels like a very oversimplified explanation, because for about, a week, I was every day coming in here and sort of rubbing and scrubbing and masking and spraying, and, there were a lot of points in the process where it just really looked like shit and definitely was not what I was hoping to achieve. But I just kept working it. And one thing that I did not do was undo anything. Because, look, in real life, weathering doesn't get undone. I mean, it might get washed off, but not in a combat airfield situation. So I didn't undo anything. I just kept working with it until it would sort of just click for me. And I felt like, okay, this is what I want. And that's why I say it's really a kind of a non-linear process, because it's hard to say I did, this layer, and then I did this layer, and then I did this layer, and I did X% of green, and I did Y% of black, and I used exactly this certain mixture of pastels, and because it's just not that way for me. It's all kind of, I just kind of go on feel and how it looks to me, and how well I think that I'm telling the story that I'm trying to tell. So anyway, I don't know if any of this makes any sense. I don't know if this video is going to be worth watching. But that's it. That's the story. That's the weathering story on this ME262. And I am now going to shut my mouth and call it good. And the next time you see me and this airplane will be in the final reveal for the Freddy project. Okay, hopefully that was not as painful for you as it felt like it was, felt like it must be. The truth is, I have struggled trying to figure out how to explain all that. I am rarely at a loss for words, but the truth is, I just could not figure out how to effectively and efficiently say everything that I wanted to say about that weathering process. So hopefully it makes sense. Hopefully it was worth watching. I'm thinking about how maybe I can use my next project, which is going to be the Accurate Miniatures 148th B25B, done, of course, as a Doolittle Raider, and use that as a way to maybe do a layer by layer video for how I go through the process. I don't know. You guys tell me. Tell me if you think it's worthwhile. At any rate, as always, if you watch the whole thing and you got something out of it, then my work has been worthwhile. And I appreciate you guys watching. All right? Much love. Take care.